Hello and welcome to the Digitals and the Cruel World podcast, the place to go for all of your cloud accounting and tech knowledge in the UK accounting space and beyond. And I'm joined by two amazing people for this episode. One, we're welcoming back Lara Manton, the expert of bookkeeping. Lara, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Ryan. Yeah, no, it's a exciting world in the world of bookkeeping and tech at the moment. Certainly some AI and some advancements coming up in the software world. So lots to talk about today.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've got some insights specifically on how it's going to impact bookkeepers. And I always love to hear those. And we also welcome Ian Gregory, who I believe has been on. I've definitely talked to you before, Ian, from Advanced Track. Ian, one, are you excited to be joining us today? And two, have you got any insights for us as well?
Yeah, really lovely to be here and to meet Lara, who I've not met before. I seem to spend most of my time these days thinking about AI and humans and which bits are still going to be done by humans in a year or two's time. So I'm really excited to hear about the latest enhancements in the AI field and also on compliance, which I think is going to be more and more important as something we need to look at.
Definitely. I mean, it's impossible to avoid talking about AI at the moment. I was privileged to be at a book launch recently, which was about a firm that was run entirely by AI, which is scary in itself. But I also have a little, a bit of exciting, tension that's been building up in the mid-tier accounting space between two big players that we're going to dive into in app news later on in this episode. So look, firstly, thank you both for joining. I want to hear all of your insights as we progress. And on that note, I think we should kick off the show. Over to you, Lara.
Well, just talked about AI, and the first one is all about AI, and this is Apron's new AI agent, William, who is going to come in and assist business owners and bookkeepers. And the first part of this is around data capture and document capture, those missing items, not just adding, dropping, WhatsApp app. The next level is William will actually go into your inbox and go and find those documents for you. So for those clients where they're really not great at downloading things or they don't have the time and it's like, oh yeah, it's just in my inbox, I'll grab it later, William will actually connect up to the inboxes and go and have a look and find that. Now, this is always an interesting one because I know there's security issues about that. People don't necessarily want AI connected to their emails. So it'll be interesting to see what the uptake of this is. I think certainly if you've got an accounts email address, that's a really good place to get started and kind of just, you don't have to worry about email rules and auto forwards and all those kind of things. William will go and do it. But it's also interesting to see that this is the first sort of agent that's sort of being not pushed towards, but sort of this is the first step of using agents in software natively without us really having to build that in. So I think this could be a really interesting thing for the next stage of bookkeeping and pre-accounting tools.
Yeah, I do wonder. I think they missed a trick. They should definitely call it Will AI Am or something like nerdy like that, right? But I think that you pick on something, right? You highlight something which I think is going to decide if this is like a success or a failure, and that's how open people are to have an AI just kind of go through their emails. And I think, Ian, you mentioned at the start of the show about that compliance aspect and that kind of nervousness. So what's your take on this? Do you think people will just plug it in?
I think there are going to be some people who dive in gung-ho and then come croppers. And I think there are other people who are going to be overly cautious and don't get the benefits. And certainly, I've now got AI reading my emails, but I certainly wouldn't let it send any without my permission. And I know one or two other members of the team here are doing the same thing. But there'll come a point where we trust it enough that maybe we just let it go.
Yeah.
But I think, if you look at new tools like Claude Cowork, it's so powerful in what it can do. And yet, if you look at Dario Amodei, he's the CEO of Anthropic, and look at his blog, he quite clearly states that they've got issues around, for example, what's called an AI persona, where it adopts a particular persona that's not entirely reliable. And he actually cites a case of where one of the AIs they were training decided it was evil. And started doing bad things because it believed it was an evil person.
Well, look, I like the idea actually of AI having a persona. It kind of makes it more human as a feel. I like that. Maybe not evil. We want to avoid evil. But one of the things that I like about what they've stated about William is that it's not going to have the human intervention, i.e., your emails are still secure. It's going to read through it, it's going to extract the data, and it's going to be private. And then it's going to auto code based on what it picks up. That at the moment, I believe it's going to do completely on its own, but they're going to bring in the ability to train it yourself. So if it's starting to put things in the wrong place, it will learn, tweak, and change that based on the feedback you provide.
Also, it's going to show you that logic of why it's coded where it is. You're going to have a little bit more control, as you say. That's really important when it comes to training, is to actually understand why the AI's made that decision in the first place. And then you can train it based on, oh, you've taken this presumption, it's not quite right. So I think having that understanding, and as you say, some of that, it's not going to just log in and read everything. It's going to be looking for specific things based on the missing document workflow. It's going to be looking for specific items in there. So there are these securities, and it's the only place it's sending them is Apron. So you're not going to get things fired off, hopefully, to elsewhere. It is that next, it's sort of that evolution, isn't it? We've gone from OCR, AI and AI plus OCR, and the next thing is AI leading into that document capture.
Yeah, and just one other thing to say. The reason that the AI vendors are doing this testing is to make sure that an AI that's designed for bookkeeping is actually good at bookkeeping and only good at bookkeeping. And that's part of the protections they're putting in. So, going forward, I think it's going to be really interesting just to see how that pans out. Anyway, that leads us on to our next thing, which is more about compliance, which is firm check. So let's talk about firm check's latest updates. And this is one of those releases where if you actually done AML, firm check being an AML vendor in a firm, you'll immediately see what they're trying to fix. Because most AML tools stop at ID checks, but that's not how AML works anymore. What firm check's doing, and you can see it clearly in this latest release, is building around ongoing compliance, not just onboarding. A few specifics on that. You can now link client records directly to Companies House and pull live data in not just onboarding, but continuously. They've added bulk watch list monitoring, so you can apply ongoing checks across your entire client base in one action. And crucially, they've shifted language from start AML to reassess AML, which sounds small, but actually reflects a real change in how firms are expected to operate. And that's only going to get more so as things like the FCA type rules come in. Further, if you add in things like verification expiry tied to when a client actually engages, not when you send it originally, because it can take months for these things sometimes. Automated tracking of Companies House ID. All of this just isn't about making AML just faster. It's about making it continuous and auditable and defensible. Because when the regulator comes knocking, we ran an ID check once, may not cut it anymore. So even more important, at a time where Companies House themselves launch a complete cock-up of how records could be updated, here's firm check doing something genuinely different. Most accountants in the market think basic KYC tools are still point-in-time checks fragmented across tools and heavily manual once onboarding is done. Firm checks pushing towards a single AML control center, risk assessments, monitoring, documentation, audit trail, all in one place. They're trying to win on completeness, not just fastest fingers first. The trade-off? It's heavier, more structured, less lightweight and easy. So I don't know how that's going to work in practice. Maybe Ryan or Lara, you've perhaps got something to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, like AML is boring, right? To some extent. Let's be honest, it's not going to be the fun bit of any of the conversation we're talking about, but it's critical and it is getting more and more important, I guess, as we progress. And, we've got changes with the FCA and what they're bringing in later on this year. So all of this is, I guess, critical to make it a better experience for us as a firm, but also for our clients. And I think that, what Firm Check are doing, and they feel like they've kind of rebased themselves at a point where they can now accelerate and really develop. I think that's what we're gonna feel and probably see a lot more from them over the coming year. But let's move into something a little bit more exciting, if you don't mind, and that's dashboards. Who doesn't like a dashboard nowadays, right? Well, AdFin have launched a new dashboard to try and bring all of the relevant data that they've got in their platform now. So they've got all the different ways that you can receive money from your customers, but they've also got credit control. And they've brought that all into a single visualization that states how you've been paid. So there's multiple different ways you've been paid, but highlights how that's happened. Historically, if you've ever used the AdFin platform, that's something I always struggled to identify straight away. So that's now a lot more clear. And also how your late payment rate is trending and compares across different and I guess aligned or similar customers. And then it's looking at kind of specific customer insights. So how is this individual customer normally paying? What's their cadence? What are the issues? What are the things that you need to flag to you? And I thought it's a good, I guess, it's a good way of bringing all the various elements that are developed over the last couple of years together into an easy way for you to digest that information.
I think that's the key thing, isn't it? Is having that information at your fingertips, accessible, easy to make those decisions, easy to act upon it, especially when it comes to getting in cash, which is the lifeblood of any business. If you know who those late payers are, who you need to have those proactive conversations with, I think it's really helpful. And interestingly, around the government's announcement on making that slow payment legislation harsher. This is going to be a big thing. And I know AdFin also have the ability to do all the admin around late payment charges and fees and interest and all those kind of things, which again is going to encourage people to actually use the legislation rather than just kind of sitting there and going, oh, well, I've got to go and work it out and calculate it. It's too much hassle. So hopefully, I think those two elements coming together is going to make it easier, not just for bookkeepers and accountants, but hopefully businesses, if they're using AdFin, to make sure they're getting paid on time.
Definitely. And I think I've seen since this announcement, so many suppliers come out and say, we are gold status. We're paying as good as you possibly can. I don't know if there's a platinum one, as good as you can possibly do. And I guess treating your suppliers with respect in your payment terms. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that and that kind of visibility inside the platform, adhering to those statuses. But my next topic is very much back to AI. So I wish we could talk about something that wasn't AI, but this is essentially what a lot of the releases are all about. And this is from Fathom. They have brought in a new commentary writer. Now, this is something that they had historically in the system where you could auto code some of the terminology, descriptions that complemented your reports. But, and they state this themselves, what I guess the frustration for any of this, some of the feedback was it just restates what's already visible. Like, what is the benefit of this? We can write something that just, states what we can see. That's not actually adding any insights, any deeper knowledge, any awareness that's going to complement the reporting, the graphical layers that you see in Fathom. So what they've essentially done is they've built this new AI commentary writer, and it looks at business context. So instead of it stating revenue is increased by X%, it will now say things such as revenues increased by X%, which is slightly below the target of this percent. And that's due to this, which could be, as an example, a delayed product launch, or for example, that they've not increased their prices when they said they would. And this is all because you can build this context now, your objectives, your strategy into the system. And it will look at that. It will look at what's happening with the data, and it will bring all this together to go, this is what we're observing, and this is why it's occurring. And that is a big game changer for reporting, because I get fed up with seeing all that kind of boring jargon. And to be honest, there's a lot of accountants that just go out there and repeat what's seeing without actually adding the value. If you've now got AI that can do that, that's now moving fully into that advisory space. It's taking that stuff that we should be doing. And I guess now, instead of writing all this, we're analyzing, reviewing it for accuracy, and then complementing it.
It's interesting how the AI tools, a year ago, we were talking about prompt engineering, whereas now, the leading edge is looking at things like context engineering, which is how do you describe the context that the prompts are working within. And this is a really great example of using that sort of thinking so that the AIs consistently know what the background is, so it knows what the company does, what it's aiming to do, the history of accounts, which makes that analysis just so much more valuable.
Not only that, Ian, but obviously prompt engineering is about us kind of prompting the AI to get out what we want. I feel we're starting to get towards the AI prompting us to now like think about what we're doing and what we're putting in. It's now going, you should be considering this. Do you feel that that's where we're moving towards?
Yeah, I mean, the way I now work with AI is I go, I want to do this. What's the best way of doing it? Ask me some questions. And it will come up with a load of questions and go, well, you could do it this way or you could do it that way. I might go, okay, so give me the pros and cons of each approach. And it will get down to the point where actually it's driving my process. Then when I've got it really nailed, I'll go, right, now, because I use Claude, I'll go, can you create a skill of that? So it's then got a repeatable process where I just go and do this. So, for example, I've now got one for vendor due diligence on SaaS products. I just put the website in, go do a due diligence, and 2 minutes later, I've got it.
Yeah.
So really, really powerful.
And it's basically become our digital assistant, right? You've got your own little kind of partner in crime that's working with you to maybe not crime in going back to the earlier comments, but with the evil AI. But you know what I mean, right? With the little partner that's kind of working with us and assisting us. And I think that's how we should be always looking at these AI tools. They're not replacing what we're doing. They're becoming our little junior or little assistants kind of helping us move this forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just absolutely astounding how quickly things are moving. So that brings me on to the next story, which is also about AI. And this is a new player, which is Easy Capture. So Easy Capture entered the space in the UK. And on the surface, you might think, do we really need another one of these? Because we've got Dex, we've got HubDoc, we've got Auto Entry, we've got Briefcase, lots of others trying to solve the same problem, getting data from a receipt into the ledger. But Easy Capture is trying to position itself slightly differently. They're not just talking about OCR or extraction, they're talking about agentic bookkeeping, translation, not just reading the document, but understanding it, coding it, and pushing it through the workflow. And to be fair, the feature set that backs that up, line item extraction, VAT treatment, prepayments and accruals, CIS workflows, and duplicate detection, it's clearly beyond basic capture. And they're claiming 99% accuracy tested with real firms over 18 months. Now, if you compare that to Dex, obviously it's been around for a long time, both in its receipt bank form and currently Dex, and it's moving from capture into decision making. So it's learning how your firm codes transactions and scaling that logic. Whereas Easy Capture is starting with the claim that it can do both. And that's ambitious. It's very easy to say how we'll automate bookkeeping. It's much harder to handle messy edge cases, inconsistent client behavior, and real-world VAT decisions. I mean, personally, the more I look at bookkeeping, the more it's just a very messy thing that I think it's going to be challenging for AI to sort out. And if Easy Capture has got this right, it's going to be really able to compete with the entire pre-accounting layer. So, Lara, what do you think about it? Have you seen it at all?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We've talked about pre-accounting tools or automated bookkeeping and AI over the last sort of few months, and we've seen tools that have done it well and tools that unfortunately have had to close because they've had issues around it. So it's not what happens when you've got a perfect use case, it's what happens actually in that real world data collection. Because as you say, Ian, bookkeeping is messy, transactions are messy, understanding what needs to be coded why based on more than just what's on that receipt is a lot of what bookkeeping is. I think the interesting thing is going to be around CIS. I think, again, having a tool that can do that CIS part is really interesting, especially because I think a lot of that's going to come in with MTD. There's going to be a lot of people that are captured around that, those small subcontractors. And then on the other end of the scale, the accruals and prepayment pieces, which we haven't seen in the document capture in quite the same way before. So it's sort of targeting the middle, but also spreading out across different areas to say, look, we can do everything from small to big. And it will be interesting to see whether they can actually back that up. I know they've said they've got a history there and they're using real data, but I think it will be, when you spread that across lots of practices and lots of businesses, does it still hold up?
Definitely. And I think it's not easy to transition away from an embedded OCR system that you've been using for so long, because you've got your clients using it and you then have to retrain or re-engage with them all. So there has to be a differentiator. There has to be something that's a unique thing it's going to do. And you highlighted some really perfect points there, Lara, like CIS definitely with what we're doing with like MTD for income tax and the accruals and prepayments, because so many tools now want to try and eradicate that period. And you need to be able to allocate to where the cost should occur in your P&L, not just what the date of the invoice is. So yeah, I think those are specific use cases that we'd love to see more and more come into these OCR tools.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mentioned, how does it compete with the likes of Dext? And one of the things that's changed in the last year is the economics of software development. So whereas just a year ago, I might have said they'd really struggle with a big team like, competing with somebody huge like Dext. Now, actually, a small team can be an advantage. And, if they're really smart about where they focus, I think that could be really successful in terms of niching. So it'll be really interesting to see how they get on and how well they succeed.
Talking about CIS, FreeAgent have gone sort of the other way and are allowing you to do CIS transactions directly from bank coding. So no need for raising invoices or having that information there. Obviously, you do need to raise invoices and send them to your clients, but having that ability to do that without kind of in the bank itself, because I know I've got a client, CIS, little receipt book, writes it down, cuts off a piece of paper, sends it to the person. That's how subbies work sometimes. So FreeAgent is saying, right, okay, actually we'll allow that to be done from the bank statement. You can gross up, work out your CIS deductions based on what you've received into the bank, actually have that split, be able to do it on those details rather than having to have that paperwork around it. So I think we know CIS is a minefield. You've got domestic reverse charge, you've got VAT, whether they're verified or not, all these different percentages. And most builders and small subcontractors I know don't really care about that. All they care about is the money in. So I think from this route, FreeAgent are trying to make it easier for them and for the bookkeeper and an accountant to say, right, okay, you were 20% here, so we're going to work it out based off that, rather than actually having to collect all those little slips of paper and put it in or work it out. And also, if you've got a CIS statement from a subcontractor, from a contractor, again, you should be able to just work off that rather than having more documents around it. So I think, especially again with MTD coming in, there's going to be a lot of these small subbies that are impacted by this. And I think it's going to really hopefully help release some of that admin burden around it, because clients may not want to go on and raise invoices on software. They might still want their little receipt book. So I think it will be interesting to see. Hopefully, I think this is going to help both sides of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I love FreeAgent's take on anything that seems to be MTD for income tax, because they really look at the problem and think, well, what can we do that other people haven't done to try and solve this? And if there's one area, which you nailed on your head, right, which is what can we work on the payment basis? It's CIS, because that's what you're reporting on. When you report a CIS return, it's always done on the payment date, not the invoice date. So it makes sense to go from. And so, yeah, I think that is a great angle from FreeAgent. And as we've seen with what they've done with the landlord side, they're really hitting kind of every element that gets, I guess, that's a big focus and a big challenge for MTD for income tax. Well, look, I've got something that's a completely different angle here. And I teased it a little bit in the introduction. And that's that there's been a bit of angst out there between the mid-market finance platforms. And there's been some frustration from iPlicit towards Sage. And I think what they've done is the right thing and called it out. So there's been a LinkedIn post from the CEO of iPlicit, Lyndon Stickley, and he has basically said, firstly, thank you to Sage, who is calling out, for recognizing iPlicit as one of the big four kind of mid-market finance solutions. Thank you for that. But if you're going to do a comparison document, don't state a load of nonsense. Like, at least put down what the software can do. And he's kind of gone through a list of, this is all the stuff you say we can't do, and we can do every element of this. Like, be realistic, right? And be fair. And I think this is really important, is that if you are going to put marketing out there, yes, you want to show that your product is better. But if you go so far that you're putting others down to a point where an end user, someone that's looking at your marketing, is going to quite clearly see that you have, you've missed critical elements that another system can do, they're going to think that everything you're putting out there is nonsense. They're going to look at what you put and go, well, I don't trust anything you put in here for what you do and what others do. I'm going to ignore anything you say. And that's essentially how I look at this, is if you're not going to be fair to others in this space, then don't really say anything, because you're not going to damage them. You're going to damage yourself. But I think it was right to call out. I think it was interesting. And I thought it was a bit of fun. I really hope that those at Sage that have kind of picked this up have reflected on this and changed what they released, and also changed the way they do things going forward. And I'm not saying this is just Sage on its own. I've seen this from other software vendors. It's just, this is the LinkedIn post that came to my attention. I was like, yeah, good on them. Stand up and say, no, what you're doing is wrong.
Noticed that Sage had actually taken down those comparison tables, and there's part of me wondering here if they were actually generated by an AI. Because
that'd be so ironic, wouldn't it? What I would say, though, is what I found is if an AI goes and does it, usually it's pretty accurate, especially if it's listed on the website, that it kind of extracts all that information. But the only thing that you can't do, or the AI can't do, is actually talk to someone and verify any of it, right? Well, at least I don't think it can do that yet. Maybe we'll see that in the future. So, no, great that they have taken it down. And hopefully that's something that every software that's out there has picked up, looked at, reflected on, and tweaked the way they deliver to make sure actually what they're putting out there is much more accurate.
So an interesting thing around AI and Xero, and different words for AI, we're going for accountable intelligence, is what Xero have released, which is Sukhinder Singh Cassidy pushing a bit of a bigger idea that we're moving away from SaaS to software as an intelligent service. Now, this is obviously coming on the back of all of their changes, and I'm not entirely surprised around this, but it's around how the AI is getting to those results, what the understanding more about those transactions, how those decisions are being made. So it's not just about giving you the tools, it's about the AI doing some of that work around it. As we said, bookkeeping can be messy, it's complicated, and now Xero are looking, how do we move this forwards? So it's a fundamental shift in the way that they're thinking about things, and asking, again, coming back to making you ask those questions, deeper insights, working more with the software, AI coming into things like, we've already seen it with the auto rec, but coming more into the software on a day-to-day basis and embedding itself in the finance. So if you're doing that, you need to prove how you've done it, why you've done it, where you're coming it from. And I think there's a few others coming this way. Obviously, QuickBooks are pushing more AI into their workflows. We've already talked about the agentic apps coming out, William and other agents within software. So Xero is saying, yes, do that, but do it with caution. Do it with responsibility, do it with the backup of knowing what's behind those AI decisions.
Was this needed to be said? Did we need a new term for AI? I look at this and I've gone, okay, what are you saying here? Yes, we need to be responsible. Well, duh. Obviously, we should be. I'm pretty sure Ian would back that up, and we need to be very responsible in what we're doing. We're interacting with and kind of putting out AI. Yeah, and we shouldn't be bullish. Do we need a new term for it? And what I've seen is this isn't the first time actually recently that Xero have done this, because they also came out with SAIS recently. So rather than SaaS, they've got CIS, or however you pronounce that, which is software as intelligible service. And I'm like, why are we changing this stuff? Like, surely what we've got out there is just a kind of reiteration or a tweaking or a slight deviation from what we've been doing. Do we really need to redefine what that looks like? Are we just distracting from, I guess, because we haven't got anything else to release? Which I think is ironic, because they're releasing quite a bit recently.
I have a sneaking suspicion it's because there's a big stock market drop in SaaS products recently. They're probably trying to persuade the investors that they're actually an AI play and not a SaaS play.
That makes complete sense.
There is a lot of this coming out, and a lot of updates and a lot of different things coming. And I wonder whether Xero is trying to make a mark on the industry and say, we're not doing it the way that we used to be doing it, which was SaaS, which was this version of AI. We're moving to the next version. The future is accountable intelligence. It's all of these items around it, making sure that you've got that backbone behind it. And therefore, we are pushing the market forward using certain tools, using certain terms, but actually we're going to take our own mark on that.
Yeah, I think you're both right here. There's two angles, aren't there? They're talking to their shareholders and saying, we've got kind of this modern way we're doing it, but they're also talking to their users and going, but don't look at all those other really modern tools out there because they're not been around as long and you can't potentially trust them as much. So yeah, it's an interesting way of handling. I just wanted to bring more tech out. I'm just geeky like that, I guess. And that brings another Digitals in a Cruel World podcast to a close. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Lara and Ian, for your amazing insights throughout. And we've got the upcoming Digital Disruptor Awards later in the year. We've got our newsletter that if you haven't signed up for yet, you should, because you can get all of these articles to your mailbox before we even have the chance to discuss them. And we've got so much more coming on through the year, including being at Accountex, Xerocon, and at the Digital Accounting Show. Make sure if you haven't signed up for those, you do so you can come and say hi.